Hey, how are you? Marvel Studios has announced their plans to bring the Thunderbolts into the MCU at the end of Phase 5. If you don't know who that team is, I'll give you a brief rundown. The Thunderbolts are essentially Marvel's version of the Suicide Squad from DC. They're a group of villains and anti-heroes that go on missions led by Thunderbolt Ross, hence the name. The team's roster is typically rotating around, and it never has a very consistent lineup, but there are a few characters who typically tend to stick around longer than others. Let me explain to you the lineup for this movie. It's already been announced that the team will consist of Yelena Belova, Bucky Barnes, Red Guardian, Ghost, US Agent, and Taskmaster, and then led by Val. I'm going to make some changes though because I think that this lineup could use some work. First off, I'm not using Taskmaster. I think that the MCU version of Taskmaster is past the point of being fixed, and general audiences will never resonate with how badly they massacred that character. They essentially gave Taskmaster the X-Men Origins Deadpool treatment, and I'm just going to be removing that character from this roster.
你别笑，做一个专业的演员吗？
Also, I don't think that over half of the team should be made up of characters that come from the Black Widow movie. That would just make this movie Black Widow 2. I also want to take Bucky off this team. I don't see a world where Bucky would go back to being the Winter Soldier to be a government assassin again. I'm going to keep this team relatively small, only 4 members, and you'll see why it's important to keep it contained by the time the movie ends. Now, with all of that being said, let's get into my pitch for the Thunderbolts. The movie opens on a mission. We see a grand cathedral with huge painted glass windows and a massive open area. We're in Russia. See something oddly familiar. Captain America's shield, but something's off. The red and white are still there, but in the middle, the blue and the bright white star are gone. A black void sits in its place, colorless, emotionless. John Walker, the US agent. Over his earpiece, we hear who he's communicating with. "Good work, John," Valentina Allegra de Fontaine says back to him. "Now detain the target and return to base." John ventures his way deeper into the cathedral, looking around at the breathtaking art that lines the building, but also staying focused on the mission. He walks in with his shield in front of him, and a pistol to attack with. As he moves, he hears a noise from behind him. He quickly turns around to see what made the noise, but he's immediately body slammed into the ground by a beastly man. John scrambles back to his feet and trains the gun on the man, the Red Guardian. "Alexei Shostakov, you're under arrest for the—" John is cut off by Alexei punching him in the face, knocking him back. John realizes that this isn't going to be a peaceful surrender. He smiles and tightens his shield to his arm as Steve Rogers had done in the past. John sets the pistol on the ground and squares up to the Red Guardian. The fight begins. It's vicious and fast. Each opponent swings with fury, their attacks being perfectly countered by the other. 2 super soldiers. Clearly, Alexei has lost that weight he had in Black Widow, and John had obviously been training. These 2 are equally matched. Alexei manages to get John onto the ground. He stands over him, ready to deal the finishing blow. "You fight with honor, you will die an honorable death," Alexei says. He spoke too soon. John takes a small knife from his boot and digs it into Alexei's knee, causing him to fall. John stands up and begins to beat the hell out of Alexei. "Alive, Walker. We want him alive." John backs away from Alexei. He takes a small syringe from his belt pouch and sticks it into Alexei's neck, knocking him out. Val grins. "Well done, John. He's going to be useful moving forward." Then, we cut to the title card. That's the opening scene I decided to go with. It sets up John Walker already working for Val and doing the under-the-table missions for her. Then it shows our first member of the team being recruited. I'm not going to go beat by beat on what the story should be, but I will break down how the characters could work and a rough storyline. Let's start with Yelena Belova. She's the most well-rounded member of the team. She's a spy, she's a fighter, and she's a leader. The reason she'd be joining the team would be very double-sided. Val would initially offer money to Yelena in order to buy her loyalty, but while Yelena would definitely accept just for the payout, she's mostly there to keep an eye on Val and make sure she isn't planning anything nefarious. Her role in the team would be its leader. Val knows that Yelena would be able to get a mission done, and definitely in the most undercover way possible because she's worked with the spy in the past. While on the topic of the team's leader, John Walker, the US agent. You think he'd be the instant leader of the team, but not quite. Val knows John is a loose cannon in the field. As we saw in the opening scene, if Val hadn't stepped in, John would have killed the target. Val and John have presumably been working together for a few years now, but John still hasn't fully convinced Val of his leadership capabilities. This would cause some tension between him and Yelena. He'd feel cheated out of the role, and let's be honest, John definitely isn't always comfortable taking orders from women. To top it off, he's a US government loyalist. He'll do anything they tell him, no questions asked. Red Guardian would bring an interesting dynamic to the team. He's the oldest and arguably the strongest. Not only that, but he's Yelena's father. They haven't seen one another since the events of Black Widow, so this would be a big reunion for them. While Alexei is more than interested in rekindling their relationship, Yelena wouldn't want anything to do with him. She's strictly his boss. However, as the movie progresses, I'd like to see them start to heal their relationship. There can be scenes of tension that show just how much they actually mean to one another. Alexei can put himself in harm's way without question if it means saving Yelena, and Yelena can do the same for him during the third act fight. And for our final member, Ghost. She's the team's wild card. She can get in and out of places with ease, and I want her scenes to almost play as a horror movie. Found footage through security cameras and body cams of guards and soldiers trying to fight this invisible killer. It would add a much needed tone to the character, who fell relatively flat in Ant-Man and the Wasp. Another thing to keep in mind with Ghost is that she's all by herself. She has nobody. She'd be recruited when she'd be arrested trying to steal something from the Raft, the super prison in the ocean. She joins the team because she's promised her freedom if she complies with the mission. As the story progresses, I think that it'd be cool if Alexei and Yelena almost accept Ghost into their family. They lost Natasha during Endgame, and they see just how broken on the inside Ghost is. Ghost is a victim. She never asked for any of these powers. She was never asked to be turned into a weapon. She lost her entire family in the same incident that cursed her from ever being normal again. Ghost would play as the heart of the movie. So what's the main plot of this movie? Well, Val enlists the Thunderbolts to protect the new president of the United States, Thunderbolt Ross. Why does it need protection, you ask? Well, recently there was a security breach in one of the most highly secured test facilities in America. During the breach, one test subject got out, Project Sentry. The government kidnapped the man and began testing on him with a highly experimental super soldier serum variation. He was going to be used as America's ultimate weapon. Well, the experiments worked, better than they could have ever imagined. Robert Reynolds became a god with unknown levels of power. Sentry escapes using his new abilities and vows revenge on Thunderbolt Ross for the torture that he put him through. Throughout our time with the character, we realized that, just like Ghost, he was experimented on, given abilities he didn't want. Then, he was going to be turned into an all-powerful weapon. Sentry's a victim, not a villain. While we watch this character, we see that he has a dark side to him, a being known as the Void, a dark, shadowy figure of himself with immense power. As the film goes on, the Thunderbolts learn about Sentry's origin and they decide not to kill this man. They want to help him. Well, almost the whole team. John Walker is a government loyalist, as stated previously. Our final fight has two parts, the first being Red Guardian versus US Agent, a rematch from the opening. As they fight, neither of them hold back. At the end of the violence, they're both on the brink of death. John tells Alexei that the job needs to be finished no matter what. His anger gets the best of him. He kills Alexei in cold blood, right there where he lies. After this, Sentry is taken back to the lab. The second part of the final battle takes place in Seoul, South Korea. With Alexei dead, Sentry is back in custody, and John's still out there. Yelena and Ghost both agree that they need to figure something out. They need to release Sentry. It's the right thing to do. Forget about the money or the freedom. Yelena and Ghost take out guards in the underground laboratory in a massive one-take fight scene that lasts over 5 minutes. The two anti-heroes clearing out room after room of scientists and soldiers. Eventually, they reach the room where Sentry is being held. Yelena and Ghost kill all the scientists and guards in the room, but there's still one person who stands in their way. John Walker. Yelena and Ghost try and fight him, but they aren't super soldiers. John easily outmatches Yelena with his strength, and he's able to counter Ghost's phasing abilities with his sheer speed and reflexes. Almost all hope is lost until they notice Sentry. Yelena and Ghost need to think fast. Yelena takes a grenade from her vest and pulls the pin, throwing it to Ghost. She then phases through the tube, leaving the grenade inside. The grenade explodes, releasing Sentry. John looks at the godlike being that floats towards him, Sentry's eyes glowing a fiery gold. But then, he rises into the air, red lightning begins to shoot out of him, and he's engulfed in shadows. The Void has arrived. Void looks at John and knows he's the reason he's being tested on. Void makes quick work of John. He grabs him and lifts him into the air, then proceeds to electrocute John with the red and black lightning that fills the air. The lightning is so strong that Ghost needs to grab onto Yelena and phase them both through the electricity filling the room. After a moment of horrific screaming from John, his burnt, nearly dead body is dropped to the floor. Void drops him to the ground and crawls towards John, distorting his body in an almost poltergeist way. He reaches John and grabs his chest. John begins to scream as Void rips his entire body in half. Oh yeah, did I mention that I want this to be the first R-rated MCU movie? We can't have this many violent anti-heroes in a movie without using excessive adult language, intense violence, and gore. We just can't. In the closing scenes, we watch as Yelena and Ghost talk with Sentry on top of the Lot World Tower, the tallest building in Seoul. Yelena tells Ghost that Val is going to be after them, and Ghost just tells her that there's nothing new to her about being on the run from the government. Yelena says that she's going to go figure out a proper way to say goodbye to Alexei, but Sentry has other plans. He knows that the Void is too powerful and dangerous to be left unchecked and in the public. He's going to fly into the mountains of Nepal and live there. learning to master his abilities and keep the void suppressed, far away from people as he can get. The 3-part ways in the movie ends. And that's my pitch for the MCU Thunderbolts. Let me know what you thought of this, and let me know what you would have done differently down in the comments. The Thunderbolts have the potential to become its own franchise in the MCU with a constantly rotating roster that can lead to some incredible stories. Make sure you like the video and subscribe for more pitches and movie reviews. I'll see you later. Take it easy.